Good morning and welcome to Vision in Action Live. We have a presentation on fulfillment plans and a discussion today with Dr. Laura Gabayan, physician and researcher, associate professor of emergency medicine at UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine, and author of Common Wisdom. Welcome, Dr. Gabayan. We're glad to have you. I'm Jim Boswell, your host and the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life. Today's presentation is on young adult fulfillment plans, which lay out how to start lifelong fulfillment process by answering questions about who you are, what you want, and what it takes to accomplish your goals. And moreover, it lays the groundwork for all subsequent lifestyle plans as a mature adult and retiree. So young adults are those individuals between 20 and about 35 years of age that are focused on self-discovery, on acquiring fundamental knowledge and experience, and experimenting in all the areas of human endeavor. And it's also focused on increasing their self-determination and resilience moving forward. So if we look at foundations to fulfillment, it really does rely on reading, learning, and augmenting critical thinking skills. And often in as many disciplines as possible, like psychology, finance, economics, business, math, and so on. The idea here is trying to fill your tool bag with all the point solutions that you might need for a good life. And during this phase, we practice authoritative point solutions by trying things out. We set a trial problem or a proposition, we practice some factual research, we evaluate alternatives, and then we decide solutions that fit who we are and where we're headed. And this is also the time when it's critical to learn to ask, what can I trust? Who can I trust? What's a valid and reliable resource? What's biased? Is it fact or fiction at heart? And is it a valid conclusion for my goal sets? And we try to do this where prejudice, fiction, and faith really don't apply because you can't hang your hat on those without some proof. So we're trying to go toward more of a factual basis. Let's take a look further on fulfillments. Another way in the fulfillment foundation is you really need to begin to be comfortable with authoritative sources, both those that are academic, which you have seen in high school and will see in college, in grad school, and so on, in nonfiction books, in research papers, and across disciplines, some of which won't be your primary focus from a career perspective. And also getting used to, interfacing with practicing professionals. There's no reason you should shy away from doing that. The other thing is to learn how to broaden your expertise by getting feedback about things you don't know about from friends, family, etc. And so you want to share during this period some of the things you're learning with your family, teachers, and experts, and get their perspective. But just remember that at the end of the day, your final decision is the one that counts because it's your life. And this is the time when you start with setting some initial strategic goals and tactical action plans, whether that's going to college, getting your first job, getting a promotion, moving to another company, or whatever. And it's the time when you start acting on a plan as opposed to just your gut feeling for what's appropriate. Let's look at this a little further. So steps in the lifestyle development. We're just going to hit the high points. There are other podcasts that go into this in much greater detail, and I would send you to those for absolute detail and execution advice. So one is to determine who you are and what you want. You use personality profiles, and we recommend about 5 of them, of which there's Myers-Briggs, DISC, risk assessment, and so forth. And then you identify what you like and what you want, and those things you dislike, and those things that are real demotivators. So what makes you happy and fulfilled, or aggravated, demoralized, and depressed? Those we'd like to avoid, I'm sure. And then you want to assess what strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you bring to the table as a human being. And this cuts across every discipline you can think about: financial resources, education, family support, your self awareness, your work experience, and your base of knowledge. So it covers everything. And then you want to improve on what you don't know. We mentioned this previously. This is called the Johari window. And what you're trying to find out is to know things that are known and unknown to other people and things that are unknown to you. You want to know as much about your environment as possible. Once you've done that, you can sit down. Those are prerequisites, the foundation. And now you look at brainstorming your preferred interests, activities, and relationships. You do this in a quiet space with no pressure and no one around. And you do an unbiased, uncensored brainstorm. And don't judge what you come up with. You don't want to judge it. You don't want to worry about constraints or prejudice or any other influence, because you want to get as many options on the table as possible. And then you look at resources and constraints. Not everything's possible. So what you're trying to do is identify your means to act on your goals. And one of those, unfortunately, also includes doing a personal income statement at whatever point you're at. And then you develop priority plan objectives. We use the Pareto rule to keep us focused on the top 20% of your qualitative and or quantitative brainstorms. It helps us to resolve the resources and constraints issue, and it allows us to finalize a plan and the required actions necessary to see that plan through. So then what you do is you live and work the priority plan. Everything you've set on paper, you experiment, you test, you do research, you learn, you respond to change, upsets, failures, and success. And you integrate these results back into revised objectives, because things change in our lives and you're going to have to be able to reset your strategic plan and tactical execution goals. So you measure the results as you do this. You provide yourself feedback by doing that, and you can integrate those information points back into your plan. And then periodically, you simply need to refresh your objectives. You revise your plans or actions when and as required. So starting out with young adults in the 20 to 35 category, here's a couple of, a small list of basic information sources in different disciplines that will get you started. Much more detail is available on the website, lifelongfulfillment.com, and I recommend you go there for the complete list. But here's a good place to start. Many of these are books, but many of them also have podcasts attached to them for those of you that feel more inclined in that direction. So take a look at these, and we'll tell you how to get to these through the newsletter features, so that you have direct access. And so summing up, you have to give credit where credit is due. You've received the best available contemporary information and guidance that's available to you from your parents, your coaches, your teacher, your university, your employers, some of which was factual and some of which is potentially fictional. Well, now's the departure point where you want to start relying on yourself and developing your own fact-based solutions that lead to your best life. And it's all up to you, with, of course, some well-meaning support along the way. So if you lack knowledge and tools to make these good choices, you need to dig into the lifelong development process so that you can create plans and do the right things that are optimized to deliver your goals and objectives. So lifelong fulfillment will empower individuals to understand who they are, what they want out of life, financial, educational, environmental, and other information points that they need to master. And to master this process, which is robust and dependable and can be counted on to deliver dependable results. So go to the newsletter and it will have all the listing. Go to the website for everything else, including the podcasts and the newsletters that'll help you through your lifelong development process. And now is the time in our program when we engage perspectives of those leading self-directed lives and point solution experts. Today we have Dr. Laura Gabayan, physician and researcher, associate professor of emergency medicine at UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine, and the author of Common Wisdom. Welcome, Dr. Gabayan. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Gabayan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background so we get you introduced to our attendees today, and about your passion for this particular book.
So I went to medical school and residency and did research training, and I was always thought and taught to think inside a box. And in a way, the schooling was a curse. And I encountered some health challenges, and I realized, well, the only people who do think outside the box are the wise. And then I looked into wisdom, like, wait, it's very anecdotal. And a lot of people in religious texts talk about it, but it's still pretty anecdotal. Oh, I think this is wisdom, that's wisdom. And so as a researcher, I decided to look at wisdom myself. And that was kind of the push for the book. And that's when I interviewed 60 wise individuals.
I see. I see. So, when did you start the project?
So, as with all research, there's many different steps to doing it, and the first step is to find out what's been done. And
Mm-hmm.
I looked at different journals in academic medicine and mainly geriatric psychology and sociology. And I started many, many years ago. And I read about what have they figured out with wisdom. And what they had figured out was, first of all, it has an inversely relationship in that the people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s are the most wise. You need to have some life experience. And then the ones that are older lose their wisdom because they actually are not as flexible. They're more rigid in their ways. And the other thing the literature taught me was there's no gender or political affiliation associated with it, and that the only people that can really identify someone who's wise are people, not computers, not tests, nothing but people.
I see. Okay. Um, so in doing this, maybe we could explore, how you got access to 60 wise individuals and how that developed. How do you find wise people?
So I initially had a definition. It involved making good decisions, giving good advice, and what I learned first of all, and then I learned that no one really uses that definition. And the way I came up with the 60, as a researcher, you should have no say in who the participants are, or else that would be biased. So I just told everyone and anyone I knew, um, what old teacher, anyone I knew, do you know someone wise? And I also had a research assistant and a marketing specialist based out of Florida, and they posted it on Nextdoor, Reddit, and like we just told the internet, we told social media, we just said, do you know someone wise? Can you nominate them?
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And so by asking the people when I interviewed them if they knew someone, they would nominate someone too. And it just grew.
I see. Okay. All right. So you talk about common wisdom and the 8 elements that are common to people that are considered wise. Maybe you could walk us through some of those.
So one thing that was really important is and you'll find out when you read the book that there are of the 8, there are some that are you're really good at, and there's some that you're not so good at, and you can build one over the other. The first one, and the one that was most prevalent in the people I talked to, was resilience. And then we had kindness, which was most surprising to me. That was so important to them. Third was positivity. And then it was spirituality and humility, tolerance, creativity, and curiosity. And it was just fascinating. I mean, creativity and curiosity are very childlike properties. They're things we have as kids. And
Yeah,
and tolerance and humility help you connect with people. And so does kindness. And positivity and resilience is what lets you go through life. So overall, when you put them all together, it's a way of being content and managing and being satisfied and happy with how life is going, regardless of what it may throw at you.
right, right. Okay. So you mentioned that it seems like this is something that people in their 50s through their 80s are more likely to focus on than, say, someone who's, in college or early career days. Maybe you have a comment about that?
So it's funny you mentioned college. So that's something that, when I first hired my research assistant and the program, the project manager or the person who helped advertise this, there was a thought, even amongst others, that wisdom was intelligence and was education.
Uh-huh.
And
No,
it,
it's not.
it's like the wise can be curious and they may pursue an education, but we all know people who have made good decisions, who live meaningful lives, and who may not be highly educated. So the two don't go hand in hand necessarily. And college educated, I saw several studies that tried to assess wisdom in younger adults just to get the publication. And they used the gold standard. The gold standard was who is what. It was just not, they were not able to figure that out. The people did not have enough life experiences to do so.
Right, right. Well, that's something that, in lifelong fulfillment that we've come across is that, you know, subjects like fulfillment and being happy and stuff frequently have uh, basic returns when you're young, that it takes time to build experience and to test yourself and to really get a clear head about what you want out of your life and how to go do it. And so it's been our kind of opinion that uh, you know, I think happiness can occur fairly early, because it's kind of a point thing and it has kind of an emotional base. It's more visceral, if you will, say, than something you've had to work to learn. Whereas I think contentment and fulfillment down the road takes some time and experience. Did you see that in your interviewees?
Well, I feel like contentment and fulfillment are part of developing wisdom. And
Hmm.
being happy is also part of it as well. And so if you see someone who is a negative person that's not happy, they're not really content or fulfilled often. I mean, I don't know, say the two. So they kind of go hand in hand. I did see that in the people I interviewed, I did feel like there was a sense of peace about them, a sense of it'll be okay, a sense of take things one step at a time and don't make it a big deal in your head. Don't be emotionally upset about things or whatever it may be. Just don't let your emotions take charge. So I saw that, and so I would say that they had a sense of fulfillment because of that.
Right, right. So is wisdom more an intellectual pursuit than, say, an emotional pursuit, do you think?
I would, someone asked me, is it the goal of life to pursue wisdom, or is it important to have wisdom to pursue life or to go through life?
Good question.
And I think in the same realm, first of all, it's the combination. I think it's more emotional and it includes intellectual, but at the end of the day, having wisdom really means okay, you let's break it down into those eight elements. And it's really being okay with life and realizing life will throw things at you and you will overcome them. having that emotional perspective, and then also the how you are day to day. So it's the combination of, actually, I first said it's emotional, but it's a combination intellectually being tolerant and being accepting of other viewpoints and being thoughtful of other perspectives. So it's a combination, I would say.
Okay. All right. Um, Hearkening back to who chooses, say, wisdom or fulfillment or, say, just happiness, one of the issues we keep running into is that happiness is a catch-all phrase. And in the vernacular, in the psychology texts and everything, and that it's most people who don't delve into this early on and have actually done reading typically don't understand the distinctions. And so, when you say, I want to be happy, actually, you might be saying, I really want to be fulfilled, or I want to be a wise old person when I'm aged. uh, but that, we're kind of going by feel, if you will. One of the things we trying to do is elucidate, facts and experts such as yourself to help create greater distinction in what those various things mean. Um, do you find that yourself, that happiness is kind of the catch-all?
It's funny because it's a good question, because it goes back to, why did I pursue happiness, how wisdom and not happiness? And so I
Right.
feel like happiness is a subcomponent of wisdom, but it's very diffuse, as you said. And it involves being, happiness can mean many things to different people. It could be the way you pursue life, you look at life, the way you feel like life is treating you. It could be different things, but it's not, I feel like it's a superficial component. I think being positive is more, and it's more substantial and includes happiness, because in positivity, what I found is it included gratitude. It included a perspective that it's okay, it'll work out, and I'll get through this, and I'm strong enough to forego this, and not worrying about it. So being positive about the outcome, and not worrying about it. So I don't feel like happiness is does it justice, for example. So I that's how I think of it.
I see. Okay. Okay. Very interesting. So you've just released the book. Am I right about that?
I did. So I published it a few weeks ago, and from what I've heard from people reading it, it has changed the way they think about their life and they
Hmm.
approach their life. And it's meant to do that. One guy wrote me, he's like, I realize I'm very intelligent but not so wise. I'm like, no, the goal of this is not for you to say, oh, I'm good at, and I have wisdom, or I don't. The goal for you is to say, okay, these are the 8 elements. I'm really good at this. I'm not so good at that. Let me build on this.
Right.
Breaking it down. I like to kind of simplify it. And as a researcher, I needed the objectivity to do that. I needed to figure out what the details were of wisdom and what it mean to be wise. I didn't understand that. So I think having those 8 elements really helps you put it into perspective. Did I always think, oh, wisdom was being spiritual? Yeah, I definitely did. But I saw people that, in my interviewees, who were spiritual and who were not. So I think it's the combination of all of it. It's not just one thing. And I think it's important for someone to realize, oh, I can get better at this. So that's a goal.
Okay. All right. So, any comments you care to make about lifelong fulfillment, in that I've tried to familiarize you with our approach, and or any parting comments you want to make to the audience at large?
Well, it's a process. I think lifelong fulfillment is a big process. It's a way of thinking and a way of living. But but it's also, and that's why this book is so important, because it'll help you get there as well. And I feel like wisdom is, in a way, looking at that, looking at, how can I be more fulfilled? How can I have more substance and meaning in my life? And the reason, and the way I've written this book is that I've made it very simple. As a researcher who's used to writing and publishing papers that are very to the point, I'm
Mhm.
used to writing like one sentence really means what someone else can say in a paragraph. This
Sure.
is an easy read. And that's a goal. The goal is for you to read it and be like, oh, that was easy. That was not hard, but it made me think. It really made me think about how I approach things. And then even if you do a little bit, change a few things here and there, then it's done a great job. And realize that it takes time, things will change. And the book can serve as your companion, it can serve as your friend or buddy that you can always resort to. And
Mhm.
that's part of the reason why I have excerpts of answers you can give in different time frames, because your perspective will change. The way you think now will change in 20 years. So I view this book as something that will change your life.
That's great. That's great. So, where can they learn more about common wisdom on your website, maybe,
Um,
or and where
yeah,
would they get the book?
so I have two websites, but the main one is lauragabayan.com. And there is a website called the Wisdom Research Project website. And that's what we use to recruit the
Mhm.
60, when they would go to a website to look it up and figure out what the project was that they were being involved in, or being, and more about me. And then it converted from recruiting to writing the book, and then it converted to publishing the book and being done with it. So that website has served many purposes, and that's also another website. But I think lauragabayan.com is probably the best way. And the book is available on Amazon. So anyone can look it up on Amazon, and it's on promotion. It'll be on promotion. But I just think it's a quick read, it's an easy read, and it will change your life.
It has a lot of good messaging.
Thank
Well,
you.
listen, thank you, Dr. Gabian, for joining us on Vision in Action Live today. We really appreciate your wisdom, and best of luck with the book moving forward.
Thank you. It was great talking to you, Jim. Thank you.
It was great. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. And that's our meeting for today. I want to thank our guest today, Dr. Gabian. Vision in Action Live, just to remind you, the podcasts are every 2 weeks and announced in advance. Thanks for tuning in to Vision in Action and Live today. We hope you got a lot out of it. Check out the Young Adult Fulfillment Plans newsletter, the book Lifelong Fulfillment, other collateral materials, and this podcast at lifelongfulfillment.com. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.